Eddy Occhipinti. Welcome to the Sport Profile.
Dylan, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I've been following what you're doing, been a fan, so I appreciate you having me on.
Likewise, I have been a fan of you since, I don't know when I was like, when did we meet? When I was like 18, 19?
Yeah, it's when
Something
you
like
were in
that?
college and you
Yeah.
were doing, cutting your teeth, doing, and I recognized that and I loved it because that's how I got my start.
Absolutely. So when Monmouth and Ryder were in the MAC together, first of all, I think life just made sense that way. Still kind of odd to me, Ryder or Monmouth isn't in the MAC anymore. But you've always had an affinity, and I have as well, with mid-major sports and mid-major conferences, rather. Why do you think, for you personally, you've been drawn to that kind of level?
Dylan, it's a good question. And I think for me, it's not some, wild story or it's not some crazy beginning. I was born into it, right?
Yeah,
When I was an undergrad at Monmouth, that's where and I got into the student media game just like you did, right? And I
yeah,
started broadcasting as an undergraduate. That's where it was. And it was Northeast gyms. It was at the time in the Northeast Conference. And,
that's right.
Ryder had actually, well, Monmouth was there. Yeah.
I remember. Oh my God, so many people forget Monmouth and Ryder were NEC schools.
Yep. And Ryder was at that point a MAC school, but I'm kind of
Yes,
born into, this world of mid-major college hoops through a love of broadcasting and where I went to school and my friends who were on the teams and I'm a classmate of them. And, one thing leads to another. And before you know it, you're just drawn to this thing that is authentic and cool and fun and watching people battle it out in a one bid NCAA league. When I'm 18 becomes the coolest thing in the world to me. And then is now
sure.
as a 42-year-old, it's still pretty cool.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, listen, I'll always love Mac lore, when there's a six-way tie for maybe fourth place. I mean,
Right.
if there's anything less than a six-way tie, I think that's newsworthy in and of itself because it's like, oh, there's not a tie this year. What's going on in the league? But there's just so much parity with the MAC specifically and, the CAA as well. But purely off vibes, what do you think the MAC and CAA have that maybe a Power 5 conference doesn't have? Just strictly
Yeah.
speaking off vibes.
Yeah, of course. I feel like a Power 4 or 5 conference, a random game in February doesn't have, I think, the same feel because for the most part, if it's two upper tier teams, they're going to be playing into March.
Sure.
They're jockeying for seeding, but they're most likely going to be in the postseason. Where when you go to a MAC gym, a CAA gym, a Patriot gym, an NEC gym, an Ivy gym, America East, and there's a big February game between two teams at the top of the standings, one of those two teams is going to get in potentially, and the
Yeah,
other one's not, right? So that vibe, I don't want to say it feels more important because I've never consistently broadcasted in the Power 5, right?
for
So
sure.
I won't speak to that, but man, when you've got a big time atmosphere, it's cold, there's probably some snow on the ground, but you get inside and it just feels a little different. And there may only be 1,600 people there, but you pack 1,600 in a tiny gym and it's loud and it feels great and you feel the energy. To me, there's no better feeling. I've lived that feeling for over 20 years.
Yeah.
So to me, it's so much fun to be in and around that.
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing better than Friday night action. So I asked this to our good friend Jaden Daly, and I'll ask it to you too. When talking about the MAC, and I know you're, more now associated with the CAA because Monmouth is in there, and also your work with Kane, Division III school, that doesn't really apply to them. But does anybody ever confuse the Mid-American Conference with the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference when you're talking to them about it?
And my work through Monmouth in the CAA and in the MAC was great. And being able to work with the MAC now and, the few schools in the league I cover, doing the tournament,
Yeah.
maybe it's just my narrow world, but my world is only the MAC, as in the
Right.
Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference.
No,
I
same.
don't, yeah, right. That's our world. When we speak about the other league, we say the MAC with 1A. We don't say the MAC with
Correct.
2A's. You know what I mean? So no one in my world makes those confusions, but And I guess the only place it would ever cross over, I would be, I guess, up in Buffalo, maybe,
Yeah.
where, you got Canisius, Niagara, and you got Buffalo. But no, in my world, it's all the Mac with two A's, and that's all it'll ever be.
I completely agree. But like I'll talk to folks whether it's, just friends of mine who know sports. They don't even have to like know the schools or go to any one of the schools, but like they'll just talk to me and be like, "Isn't Ryder in that conference with like Toledo?" And it's like, "No.
No, no,
What conference are you talking about?
yeah,
I know one
it's a
Mac."
diehard thing. It's a diehard
Absolutely.
thing with
It
us, right?
is.
Yeah.
It is. And that's something I think mid majors in the CAA and the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference have that just like the Power Fours don't. I mean, like, I'm sure they do, obviously, but it's not as widespread as the, like, we'll say the CAA, the MAC, NEC. Fans of those leagues, they're fans of every team. They know every team. They can get access to them at such a localized level,
Yes.
right? Over here, I think in, obviously the Northeast region and such, you can't really get that with schools like the Big Ten, SEC, what is being resurrected as the Pac 12 or whatever, right? It's like you just don't have that.
Yeah, and as the college game changes,
Of course,
it not even changes as it evolves because it just continues to evolve, right?
every day.
I feel like one of the things that doesn't, and yes, the rosters change and the player movement changes, but one of the things that is so cool to me about this level of basketball that you're talking about, at its core, it's a fan driven experience. I mean, you're talking
Yes.
about if you go early enough and they're shooting around, you could even have a conversation with a player. I mean, the ball is going to make it. Listen, a ball at the side of the rim is going to end up in the first row anyway, and you're going to be
Always.
able to, give the ball to a 5-year-old and have him kind of feed that ball back out, or
Yeah.
have her feed the ball out. These teams are still doing so many community things. I mean, just follow them on
Sure.
social media. They're still going to, local like diners and pizzerias and ice cream shops, and to me, and I'm sure the big schools do it too. But when you have it at a local level, I think you see these student athletes more. I think you just see them
Sure.
on in the community more. I've been able and fortunate enough to travel up to Power Five schools, and you
Yeah.
go to their facility, and you go to their basketball only facility, and it is gorgeous.
Of
And then you realize,
course.
oh wow, the players don't have to leave, this world if they don't want to.
Yeah.
They could stay right there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I saw that even at Maryland a little bit. I can't remember where I was, but I saw cluster of women's basketball players. I think it was like one of the local coffee shops off campus, and I was like, oh my goodness, like they're out of their little bubble, you know.
Right,
But
right.
at a large Big Ten school like Maryland, it's like they had the dynamic that you just described. At a school like Ryder and Monmouth, I mean, I was having classes with some of these athletes. That's
Too, at its core, I think the student athlete, for the most part, is the same. It's just
sure.
they're appreciative of all of the attention and all of the fanfare and everything else. It's just like you said, at some of those bigger schools, because of how things are structured,
Yeah,
maybe they are a little removed because they have their own dorm or their own building or they have other things like that. Where in some of these smaller campuses, they have no choice. They're just ingrained in the campus culture and
totally.
because of how the school's set up.
Yeah, I do. I do. So, Eddie, you mentioned something in the beginning. You were a Monmouth alum,
Yes.
and I don't know. I mean, I knew that about you, but to have one institution be part of your life for so long, personally for you, how does that shape you as a person, and why do you think Monmouth has stuck around in your life all these years?
Yeah. It's, I have these conversations often with friends. A lot of them are Monmouth alums also with my wife.
Yeah.
And because she didn't go to Monmouth,
Okay.
so she
Where'd she
sees
go?
it. She went to Westchester, so she sees
Okay.
it from the outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, my journey was just very unique in the sense of, I started as an undergrad there, kind of discovered what I loved there, was able to do what I enjoy there. And then as a professional for 15 years, work there and then make it part of pretty much my identity.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there who know me from that. And quite frankly, some people look at that in a way that they don't like it. And I always kind of embraced it and loved it because I was able
Yeah.
to do what I love for so long. And thankfully, still, now that I even currently don't work there full time, like you mentioned, I work at Kane University
Right.
now. To still be able to have that as part of my life and still be able to broadcast games as a freelancer, um, you know, I've been very fortunate to do that. It also allows me to it's twofold. I get to do something I love. And then, I fell in love with broadcasting at Monmouth. It's where I realized it's kind of where I wanted to do this and try to make a career, a part of my career of it. Yeah, it's kind of just always been it's been this present piece in my life since the fall of 2002. Met my best friend there. Met so many different people in my life that were so influential, both in and out of the university, but just in terms of because of my affiliation with the school, it was, you know, it's hard to describe, but it's just something that you just keep coming back to. And now as an adult with a family to still be able to be affiliated with it is pretty cool.
Right. There's a special connection, I think, that is unique to you and, obviously Monmouth because it's been in your life for so long. For people who don't really know what that feels like, could you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, of course. It's a great question because you're crossing over from the idea of what you do and kind of maybe why or the feeling it gives you, you
Yeah.
know? So it's hard to describe, right? When you're young, when you're 18, 19 years old, and you kind of start to develop, who you think you are and your own identity and,
Right.
you know, what you think you want to do and the different things you believe in, when you have that happen at a place, a lot of times you make that connection point, right? You're like,
Sure.
no, that's the place I became a man, or I became someone who was independently thinking, or I became the
Mm.
version of myself that maybe is the one I enjoyed the most.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to describe because as much as it is ingrained in me and it was a place that taught me a lot, um, good and bad. I mean, while being there, there's certain things that you're able to do that you look back on with fondness. And while you're there's certain things that you probably look back on and you're like, man, I could have done something differently, or I should have
For
done
sure.
something differently, or maybe I should have applied for that job over here and I didn't do it. But, it was a place that allowed me to be me. It allowed me to develop my own voice and my own idea for things, challenged me to a point, but also was really accepting. And, you know, I moved around throughout the entire part of my life until I came here. My
Yeah.
father was in the my dad was in the military, so I
Okay.
I kind of never had one home,
Yeah.
always moving around, always family's from Jersey, but it wasn't part of my identity till I was in high school. And then when I found this university that was kind of just, hey, here's where you can grow and be yourself, I really kind of was just drawn to it.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I don't even know your father served, so thank him for his service for
Yeah,
me.
I
But
will. Thank you.
also, like, I think that's so, I think that's really unique. It's, you mentioned how you were growing up, going from place to place. Now it all makes sense to why you have Monmouth in your life for so long. It gave you at least a little bit of a sense of like stability and like locale, if you will.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's like, why wouldn't you want to keep that in your life if it's stable, if it's, pure, like you said, where you became a man, where you became the best version of yourself? That makes perfect sense.
yeah. It doesn't. I don't know if I've even thought about it until now. And have you bring it up to me? That's why I love this and I love what you do because you
Thank you.
you do make people think. And you make people look inward, which is super interesting to me. But within that, always in my family to this day is the most supportive part
Of
along with my
course.
wife, my life, right? So that home was always moving around, but yeah, it was being able to like put those roots down and make, hey, this is home now. And then, okay, well, I could stay here too. And then I didn't even look around for college. I was just like, all right, I feel like this is the best choice. And then to kind of go from there. And
Wow.
then you're involved as you were, right? You were involved as an
Right.
undergrad. So when you're going to school and you're finding your passion and you're learning, yeah, you develop a certain connection to where you are that unless you have that, I think it's hard to explain to people how deep it runs.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. You mentioned your wife went to Westchester College. Does she have like a similar kind of background where she was going place to place, or was she kind of like stable in where she was, living and growing up as well?
Yeah, no, she had an opposite experience of me. So
Okay.
we met later in life, and she is from the Jersey Shore area.
Nice.
Um, so she, that's where we live now is where she's from,
Mm-hmm.
and Westchester provided for her an experience that she needed to get away from the shore. And then it's funny, anyone from down by the Jersey Shore, I think even if you do that, you ultimately make your way back just because
It
um
never leaves you.
it never leaves you, and it's a hard area to leave. And you know the fact that I found it later and she grew up there, but then we were able to find each other was just I find it. And we just had our 5th wedding anniversary
I know.
literally a few weeks
Congratulations.
ago. Thank you. So it's cool when you think about how you ended up where you ended up and who you ended up there with, and it's kind of funny all the different paths that get you to where you are today.
Yeah, all she did was drive up the parkway a little bit. You stayed put.
Right, right. I get it. Why would you want to leave? I get it.
Exactly. It's funny. My uncle yesterday, he grew up on Long Island whole life, and I want to say 6 years ago, 6 or 5 years ago, moved down to Florida. He's thinking of what's being called like the reverse transplant, or it's either called reverse transplant or backtracking, which is where like you obviously grow up here in the Northeast, go down to Florida because you're like, oh, you're one of those people, you want to go down to Florida and you're from the New Jersey, New York area, but then Florida gets so hot and unbearable for you. It's like, oh shit, I actually want a season or two. So he's now thinking of going up to maybe South Carolina, which is like, right in the middle, right?
Okay. Okay.
That's what he called, and I have no idea. For full disclosure, I have no idea if this is an actual thing. He probably was just talking out of his ass, but I could see it, like starting in New York, going to Florida, and then compromising in like either the Carolinas or a Maryland, maybe a Virginia. Um, Shit, what's below South Carolina? I don't freaking know.
Yeah, I think you touch a piece of Georgia on the way
Yeah,
down.
yeah, but like,
But no, that's an interesting point. You
yeah,
want
but it's like,
enough of a season. You don't want what we just had a few days ago,
oh,
but you
absolutely
you
not.
you want enough of a season.
It's
Yeah, I
miserable.
get it. Right. It's
Yeah, I
cold.
almost slipped on ice today. I don't need that.
It's
But
cold.
like
This
the
isn't for
snow's,
fashion. This is for warmth right here.
yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
freezing. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you just celebrated 5 years with your wife. Congratulations again. I know for a fact that you're a new father, and I do want to ask as well, because this question has been very fascinating to me, especially with newer fathers that I've interviewed. How has being a dad helped you as a broadcaster?
It's funny, right? Because you have the most important thing in your life, right? Being a father, and then
Yeah,
you have something for me that is the passion in my life.
right.
So it's funny because I don't draw, maybe until this conversation, a whole lot of parallel between the two. But being a father prompted, along with some other things, a career change. And
Sure.
for me, that also meant not wanting to give up the thing that I love,
Yeah.
which was broadcasting. So I think since being a father, I've even become more appreciative of the fact that I can broadcast
Mm.
because I have, quite frankly, a wife and a family that is supportive of that.
Yeah.
Not everyone gets to be with someone who kind of lets you follow your dream,
Yeah.
or who is supportive of you, following that dream, while having another full-time job. So,
Right.
um, I think it's made me more appreciative of that element of my life. It's made me value, um, the fact that I do get to have a piece of following a dream that I've had for so long while
Sure.
still. But I'll be honest, it's been, I've been thankful enough to travel the country, broadcast games all over the place. But
Yeah.
there's something really cool now about like when you get home from a game, or you're going home to a family now, so it's just
Yeah.
totally different. And the one of the coolest things I got was a video and a picture from my wife and from my family. One of the first games I did after my little guy became a not so little guy, and he was, and he can watch, and he's standing up pointing to the TV screen and all that. You get
Aw.
that. Yeah, that's one of those where you're like, all right, okay, that's a
Ain't nothing
lot,
could
that's
beat
heavy.
that. It,
It hits you
Nothing
hard.
could beat
And
that.
it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, that's really cool that he gets to see that. I mean, and it could be, it's an ESPN Plus game. It's not like it's not on, it's not on NBC or it's not on,
Yeah.
ESPN, the places you ultimately want to get to. But for him to see that and to react that way, that is something that's really hard to describe. And
Oh,
if
of
you don't get
course.
emotional, I don't know if you're going to get emotional about anything else.
Yeah. No, I could agree with that, man. I mean,
It was cool.
I just have that picture in my head, and I've never even seen it. But
Yeah.
like, oh, that does hit
That
you
one
for
lives right.
sure.
That one lives right here,
Of
and it's never
course,
going away.
absolutely. You know, you mentioned something in that though. Was there a time where you legitimately thought this could end?
you know, there was a time where it was a little, I don't want to say scary, but when, you're kind of, I don't say forced to grow up, but you're forced to grow up,
No, forced to grow up is the right phrase. I know what you're talking about.
right. And, for years I was lucky because at Monmouth, my full-time job and my broadcasting career were intertwined,
Yeah,
and it was one thing, and now they're not. And so it takes a lot of different,
it's
I just
weird.
ended up in a great situation where I am at Kane with, really supportive people. But also there's a time when you're looking for a new career and you're like, man, I don't know if it's going to be possible to do both, and
Yeah,
when, so many people I think in this industry are like me, right? Or us, right? We're all working, we're following our passion, we're following our dream, but we also are providing for people. We have to support different things. So, yeah, I mean, there's a time where you're faced with that reality and it's a little scary. And, you know, I think for me though, because of my wife, when we met, understanding how important it was to me,
yeah,
um, she was supportive in every endeavor. It was, hey, it's great that you want to go further your career outside of broadcasting. Um, and as long as you're meeting your responsibilities, I think it all makes sense and it's all good. Am I crisscrossing the country anymore to do games? Not, no, I'm not, because I
yeah,
have different responsibilities. Um, but yeah, there's that little, when you're kind of faced with the reality of potentially not doing something that you love, there's a there's that moment of anxiety, there's that moment of, man, it's part of who I am and it's been part of who I am for so long.
sure.
I don't know if I could put it down. Thankfully, I didn't have to. I didn't have to make that decision, but I definitely crossed my mind more than a few times, and we had some very serious conversations about that, and but I'm just lucky I don't have to make that decision yet.
Yeah. No, I understand fully. I truly, truly do.
Yeah.
Maybe to a bit of a lesser extent. I don't have a wife and kids to, provide for yet, God willing. But um, I understand where you're coming from and kind of the mindset you were in. And it's hard. It's hard to kind of reckon with that. It really is. I don't That's something for me that's incredibly hard to describe. And I think I'm still, I mean, getting better at through therapy, but like I don't know if I can even articulate that feeling adequately enough where somebody would relate. Maybe I will one day, I hope so, but like I don't think I can yet. But even if I'm just saying that, what I'm experiencing because you're in that as well, or you've dealt with that as well.
I think in order to have the feeling at all, it starts with having the passion for whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
Broadcasting, writing, storytelling. It doesn't have to be that. It could be, traveling. It could be, baking. It could be music. It could
that's
be
true.
fitness, right? Like it doesn't have to be this thing that we do, but if there's something you love and you come face to face with potentially not being able to do something you love because of something else, whether it's a career change, a family situation, you have to move, like that's a feeling that I think is inherently human. And it's
For
inherently
sure.
something that like, yeah, like we're talking about it through the very narrow scope of sports media and things like that.
Yeah,
But when you expand that feeling out, that's something that can unite people of not, again, not growing up to an extent, right? It's being able to do something you love and maybe you've loved since you were young. And then you're juxtaposing that with the responsibilities of being an adult
yeah,
the it's not a burden, but that feeling of like, man, I have to provide, I have to do something, or I have to go do whatever. And it's like, yeah, you do, but you also do need to do something that you love that will always, bring you that joy, whether it's doing things like this or going and building something or whatever it is,
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of on that path right now. I for some reason I phrased it this way to a friend of mine literally this morning. I was like, my doom scroll of choice, and I know how that sounds. Um has been 3D printing and furniture flipping. Like going to a thrift store, getting a table for $4 and like flipping it, restoring it, and like keeping it or selling it off. I don't have a 3D printer, Eddie.
Yeah.
Yet. I'm very close. Just pulling my credit card out and like doing something. But
Right.
that would be like my doom scroll of choice. That's like when I'm not doing this, when I'm not like editing a clip or something, I'm like, that's kind of what I'm into right now. But for
Yeah.
you, what would you say those kind of outs, aside from being a father, aside from broadcasting, are you doing for yourself?
That's a tremendous question. That really is. Like, yeah, if you look at my Discover page, it's a mess of like, you know, fantasy football and weird, and men's grooming and I mean there is like
I mean,
a
you look
oh
good. You look good. The
well,
money's well spent.
I appreciate it. It's a lot of work to be done.
Of course.
But it's it's funny, right? How what you do becomes your identity, right? It's like those two things and then it's just all, you know what it is? It's all parenting hacks. It's all like the
Yeah?
different thing. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's the, oh, is your little one being picky eating? Here's why. And quite frankly, I can't click off of that because I'm like, yeah, he's four things. I need to see what's going on here.
Right.
And you know what? It's a combination of all that. It's a combination of we throw the reality TV in because it's something my wife and I watch together. We
Of
bond over it.
course.
But yeah, it's funny, it's maybe when you have a family and you did it's I become uncomplicated as an older person. I swear it's become like these like three or four buckets of things that my life falls into.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. But it- it's funny when you think back. I have way too many videos of men getting haircuts on my timeline. Like it really is. I'm like just searching new things all the time. But it's that or it's whatever new children's programming is coming out on Disney Plus, and quite
Yeah.
frankly, everything in between.
Hey, that's fair though.
Yeah,
That's a
exactly.
fair. It's a better listen. That's a better algorithm than most, Eddie.
It's a good one. It's good. The fantasy football sneaks in there too, and that one gets a
Sure.
little, rankings and whatnot, and that's a little much. But it's that, and quite frankly, I follow a lot of other broadcasters, right? So,
Absolutely.
um, I get to see all the different things that they're doing, and whether it's the travel or whether it's people providing courses and everything else, and they get to see all the great interviews that you're doing. Like, yeah, my timeline is kind of this like melding of all those different things that come together. Yeah.
Do you know how many people wish they could have a timeline like yours?
Well, if they want, I could show them the search history, I guess.
Well, we don't need that being revealed. But
That's a good
like
point.
but like where doom scrolling is actually like productive, dare I
Well,
say?
yeah. And that's why the phrase to me is always an interesting one because I end up going down these rabbit holes and then like stand-up comedians make their way in there.
Yeah,
Like
but that's
Sebastian Maniscalco will
productive.
show up,
That's not
right?
something you're
I think it's,
insecure about.
yeah. Well, the grooming is. I think that's where that kind of, makes its way in. But no,
Who
yeah,
has better hair in the conference than you?
everyone's got a different you do because it's a beautiful head of curly hair. Everyone's got their own unique thing that makes them great.
This is true. This is true. Eddie, oh man, you just led me into my last question. I asked this to everybody, so I can't let you off the hook. Just professionalism aside, just strictly you as a person, Eddie, what's something you like most or admire about yourself?
I hope when people think of me, they just think of a genuine person. They just think of someone who, um, you know, genuinely wants to maybe hear how they're doing, meaningful conversation, meaningful moments. Um, I just want that. I just want it to be authentic stuff. I think nowadays, and maybe I've been thinking about this more because of everything we're all going through,
Yeah.
but I feel like there's more disingenuine stuff out there all over. And I think at the end of the day, what people want whether it's a game they're listening to or a 3-minute interaction at a game or whatever. It's just kind of a genuine connection and genuine conversation with someone.
Totally.
Because as much as I talk a lot, and I know, and I hear it from everyone in my life, believe me,
Same.
right, it's our burden, right?
Hmm.
But I do think I try to be a great listener, and I try to be someone who, um, whatever's needed on the other side of that conversation, whether it's just listening and gesturing, whether it's, I hesitate to give advice because I think people, I just want to be there to kind of support, whether it's
Yeah.
a fellow broadcaster, whether it's someone who needs an ear to listen to. You just want to be a genuine person to someone else. Um, and, I think what everyone else wants, right? You just want to be kind, helpful, set a good example for those that rely on you to set an example.
Hmm.
Um, and I knew the question was coming and I thought I'd be ready and I wasn't even ready for it. But I think it's just that. I think it's,
Yeah.
you want to, after you have an interaction with someone, if you can improve the day you and them are having, I think then you kind of did your job, and you kind of get on to whatever that next thing is.
No, 100%. That's worth more than anything. It really, really is. You need more of it. And I definitely think the world does too. So thank you for adding that and entertaining everybody on the broadcasts that you do. We're very much looking forward to the rest of the season. And thank you again for coming on.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the work you're doing. Shining light on all these different stories is so cool. And I'm just thankful that you thought enough of me to have this conversation with me. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and to continue to be a friend of yours. So thank you.
Always.